Hello, everyone. This is our last installment of our reading through Genesis. And so I thought today I would talk about the life of Joseph since that takes up the remainder of the book of Genesis. So we've talked about the life of Abraham, and then Isaac and Jacob was last time. And today we'll finish up with the life of Joseph. Okay, so the life of Joseph in the book of Genesis starts in chapter 37 and goes all the way through chapter 50. And I'd like to highlight a couple things here. So maybe you've already read this section, or maybe you haven't read this section yet. Either way, I think this information is going to help you. So at the beginning of chapter 37, it talks about the life of Jacob. It says, these are the records of the generation of Jacob. And then it talks about just one of his sons, but it's still talking about this chosen people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now we're talking about Joseph. So this is the fourth person that's really focused on in the book of Genesis. So the life of Joseph starts off with, if you remember, his father had 4 wives. He had 2 wives, and they each had 2 concubines. And remember, Jacob loved Rachel, and that was his wife, his only wife that he wanted. And then he got tricked into also marrying Leah, and with each one of those girls came 2 maidservants. And then they're scrambling to have children, as many children as they can, to gain favor in the eyes of Jacob. But he loved Rachel, and he loved Rachel's child the most of all. And playing favorites in parenting is not a good idea. And as a result, we see Joseph, the firstborn from his favorite wife, Rachel, is now the favored child. And all the other kids, all the other brothers recognize that he's favored. And that causes a lot of family strife, as you can imagine. So the story of Joseph is about one child being favored by his father, hated by his brothers, and how God uses that situation for not just his good, but for the good of the whole entire family. And so Joseph is sold into slavery, and then he spends 13 years as a slave. But all throughout Joseph's life, we have this phrase, the Lord was with him, and the Lord was with Joseph. God is working in his life. And interestingly enough, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the Bible records not all of their sin or shortcomings, but each one of them is recorded both good and bad activities in their life. But Joseph, only the good is recorded. We don't have any example recorded of him sinning or him not choosing God in a situation. And I think that's kind of interesting. So the life of Joseph, sold into slavery, 13 years a slave. Then through interpreting dreams, God uses lots of dreams in the life of Joseph. And through his ability with that, his gifting, his blessing in that, he rises to the second power or second in command of the whole nation of Egypt. And he prepares the nation of Egypt for the coming famine. And if you have read Genesis, you've seen famine has come up a couple times. And that was a common thing, a common worry in that time period, famine. And so famine is going to hit Egypt, and God prepares Joseph and Pharaoh with a dream that they need to prepare for 7 years of plenty when 7-year famine is going to hit. And so they do that. And Joseph is put in charge of that administrative task. Well, as a result of famine in the land of Israel, the family, his remaining family who's still in Israel, moves down or journeys down to Egypt to ask to buy some food. And in that interaction, those brothers stand before their brother that they sold into slavery, but they're not aware of this. And through an interchange, which is beautiful, I encourage that you read this. We see that Joseph is testing his brothers to see if they really have a change of heart. The brother that sold him into slavery was Judah. And he's testing specifically Judah Are you the same person that sold me into slavery? And we see that his heart has actually changed. And then he realizes that he has a younger brother, Benjamin, and asks for that younger brother to come down. He's testing the family to see, are you going to treat that brother, my other brother, the way you treated me? And through all these circumstances, we see that these family members have a change of heart. And Joseph, one of the things that I want to point out in Joseph's life is he never seems to harbor any bitterness. Now, he had 13 years to deal with this, right? Being a slave, being sold into this, sometime in that 13-year time period, he came to grips with God had a purpose in his life, and he didn't hold a grudge for his family members, and he forgave them. So, forgiveness is a big thing in Joseph's life. And the second thing I want to point out to, or I guess the second and third, this idea that God was with him and how this changed his outlook on life. Let me read for you a couple, I call it, theme verses or life verses in Joseph's life. The first one is in chapter 45, verse 7. And he says this about what he is experiencing. God sent me before you to preserve you, a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by great deliverance. Joseph is recognizing that God had a hand in all the difficult situations of his life. There is a purpose behind that. He says the same thing in chapter 50, which is one of my favorite verses. It's a lot like Romans 8:28, for all things work together for good. Chapter 50, verse 20. As for you, you meant evil against me. He's talking to his brothers. As for you, brothers, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, the preservation of many people. So Joseph had a great outlook on life. And that's one of the things that we can learn from in the life of Joseph. Even if life is not going the way that we want it to, God has a plan and a purpose for all hardships and difficulties. Joseph was aware of that. And we need to be aware of that when life is not going as we wished it would. That God has a plan and a purpose for everything he brings us through. So that's the life of Joseph. I'd encourage you to read it. I'd encourage you to note all the dreams that he has. I'd encourage you to underline and highlight every time it says the Lord was with him. And you can track his age because it mentions his age throughout it. And so you can see how many years he's spending in slavery and how many years, I think it's 22 years from when he is sold until when he finally sees his family once again. So it's a great story, lots of emotion in this story, lots of Joseph weeping. And I like that the Bible is just laying it out there for us to read, how his emotions were all throughout this situation. Anyway, so I hope that encourages you. I hope you finish the book of Genesis with us. And then I'm going to post a video next about the book of Exodus, getting you started in that book. Okay, see you later.